Welcome and good afternoon. This is Lisa Wolf, also known as Siava, with Hemp Aid Now. And our guests this afternoon are Steve Sarich and Matt Cyrus. And those of us in the hemp growing world are dealing and reeling from the USDA and State Departments of Agriculture and the proposed USDA rules as the 2020 grow season is underway. And the main topic I wanted to wrestle with today is, well, the first thing is, can the burning and destruction of 2019 hemp crops under the total THC standard proposed by the USDA be challenged, be fought, and what is the best path forward? And I believe Matt and Steve have some differing perspectives. Matt, would you like to?
Let Matt go first.
Okay.
And so that I can kind of respond to that. And I look forward to this, Matt.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd clarify that it is not proposed rules. These are actual interim rules that are full force in effect. Each state has until October 31st of 2020 to come in compliance. And how you phrased it is different than our discussion the other day. Any crop that, the 19 crop was not subject to the 2018 rules. The 2014 Delta 9 rules are still in effect. The total THC won't take effect until each state actually adopts their rules.
Yes, the states jumped the gun, and what happened, and I've got documents to prove it. The USDA was contacting the state departments of ag and encouraging them to do this, and that's collusion, okay? Because clearly there was no total THC. Even if you believe that the 2018 Farm Bill called for total THC, which is another subject, it certainly wasn't in effect in 2019. Oh, no. So all the crops that were burnt all the crops that were burned illegally.
I would agree.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as the USDA goes, they have gone ahead and again, what they told the states was to do total THC, and so of course that's what they did, was come up with total THC rules. And they did this. They told the states to do this clear back in April. That's when we can prove that they were doing it, was back in April. But they started it earlier than that. But what happens is that everybody has made the argument. Well, states were given a lot of latitude in making their own rules. But the one thing states cannot do, and the one thing federal agencies cannot do, the thing that only Congress can do, is make the definitions, and no one can change the definitions in the law, no matter what else they're given powers to do by Congress, and they weren't given that power by Congress. Otherwise, you'd have chaos. Everybody would have a different definition of what hemp is. And guess what? That's what we ended up with in 2019, was we had total potential THC, we had total THC, we had people with Utah change the definition of THC, which is like changing the definition of salt.
Sure.
It's pretty well established what the definition of THC is. Tetrahydrocannabinol is not THCA. So, but what what we really need to do is we need to stop the USDA now in their tracks by filing a temporary restraining order on them now, and they cannot win. They cannot win because, and generally speaking, when you have an argument between two parties over what the intent was by Congress, and we have those all the time, you rarely have Congress coming forward and saying, oh no, that's not what we meant this. And according to the Supreme Court decisions, once Congress says this is what we meant, if the other side, in this case the USDA, comes in and argues, oh no, let's talk about post-decarboxylation, they can't do it. A judge can't hear that because it is already clear and unambiguous what the intent of Congress was, because we have a senator who already sent a letter to the USDA and said that was not our intent, this was our intent. So they cannot hear that in court, so they cannot win. They can't go and make that story up about how one word, post-decarboxylation, actually meant you're supposed to add the THC to the Delta 9. They can't make that argument in court. They won't be allowed to do that. So we're going to win against them. And then once we win against them, now Congress is forced to actually go and come up with some new language. And we've got a year because they'll still operate under previous rules and not under the USDA rules. And we have a year in which to negotiate new laws, new regulations with them, and we can discuss those later. But go ahead and disagree with me if you got it.
Well, no, I'm certainly hoping your argument is correct. In fact, it was our two senators from Oregon that sent the letter.
Yes, thank God.
Well, and here's why. Courtney Moran, who is our executive director of the Oregon Hemp Farmers Association, was party to that drafting. And she said the post-decarb language was language that was absolutely insisted on by McConnell's office.
And I was heard from Hoban as well.
She said that she was able to get added the alternate language of, or other similarly reliable testing methods.
Right.
Her intent behind that, and the reason for the letter from Wyden and Merkley, was her intent was to offer an alternative to allow the USDA the latitude to keep the testing protocol the way it is. But unfortunately, the USDA took the opposite opinion, and it's entirely possible that they may have had some input from McConnell's office. Basically,
and the USDA, and the FDA, and the DEA.
Sure. But kind of the short version is that the feeling is that, I would agree. I would hope that, certainly Merkley and Wyden intended for it to allow more latitude. McConnell may at the same time come back and say, oh no, we intended for it to be that way. And politically, the background on that is...
It would be suicidal.
Well, Jen Canna was working with, I think it was University of Kentucky, on some ultra-low THC genetics.
But they don't have those. That's a fallacy, however. They don't have them.
Well, however, but the feeling is that the politics of it is that McConnell was trying to set up an advantage for his Kentucky farmers,
and for his own relatives and other state people who had invested in Chancana.
Right, and so here's my thought is that there's a good chance that, granted, we have two senators saying this isn't what we intended. We could also have the same issue with McConnell come in and saying this is absolutely what we intended.
Only if he wants to lose his reelection bid. He's behind in the polls, and if he doesn't come out and say and jump on the bandwagon and say, I'm going down to Kentucky this coming week,
sure.
and and this really goes back to, I think a lot of people don't understand that this goes back to the statement of principles that the USDA, FDA, and DEA did back in 2016, where they tried to reinterpret what Congress said. And they got slapped by Congress back then and told that they could not, and that was Rand Paul and everyone who sponsored that bill said that was not our intent. We never intended to add any other cannabinoids to the Delta 9, and you cannot do that. So this was their second attempt at that. All right. So McConnell, if McConnell does that, he's going to have everybody else who sponsored the bill absolutely call him a liar.
Sure. And like I say, I'm 100% supportive of keeping it the way it is. And in fact, I think the ultimate solution is just to change the definition to 1% total and not mess with Delta 9 or decarb or yes or no on heating and how the testing's done. Is just go with the total and make it one. And
then make sure the DEA is not involved. The DEA is the Drug Enforcement Administration. Yeah. Okay, we're not dealing with a drug here. So they have no place in this. The other
no
place
reason for them to be doing any testing.
And not only that, but here's where they're going to lose again in court. Is not just on the definition. They're going to lose on, and they know this. A federal agency cannot grant regulatory and enforcement powers to another federal agency. Only Congress can do that. And Congress didn't put anything about it. Well, they knew they can't do that, okay? And so it'll get thrown out on that. And once we can stop them in federal court and get a temporary restraining order, now Congress is forced into coming up with new rules, all right?
Yeah.
And it won't be the USDA that gets to write them, because we can't trust them, the FDA or the DEA in this, because they were all complicit in this. And I'll be able to prove that they're complicit because I've got the public records from Nevada Department of Ag, and I'll have them from every other Department of Ag that participated in this hoax this year. And we'll get those all under subpoena. But what they did was awful. What we saw this year in the U.S. was a catastrophic crop failure in the CBD hemp industry. Okay, if 20%, 15-20% of the wheat crop was failed in this country, it would be a catastrophic crop failure, wouldn't it? Well, in Hawaii, it was 66 2/3%. Okay, in other states. Yeah. Okay. So you cannot say it wasn't catastrophic at this point. And so what's going to happen is that's all going to come to light. You saw the ABC TV thing the other night. So this is getting out there in the press, and this is it. They made the mistake of doing this in an election year, Matt, and this was their big mistake. So what they did was they created the perfect storm. They created a shitstorm, going after farmers, illegally burning crops, tampering with evidence, falsifying documents, malicious burning of crops based on falsified documents. All of these are felonies. So if these cases go to court, first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the farmers are made whole. Okay, but in doing so, it's going to be a very, very public thing about what they did in committing felonies in order to do it. Yeah. So, and I think that's going to get us. That's going to buy us a lot in an election year. I don't think Donald Trump can do anything but have a serious talk with Sonny Perdue. Do you?
No, I mean
he needs that farm vote.
Well, and here's the other thing: is Sonny Perdue and the American Farm Bureau president are close friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm headed to the American Farm Bureau convention actually tomorrow, and we're working on changing American Farm Bureau. It's in Austin.
Okay.
And our goal with that is to go ahead and push for change in definition to 1% total, and change the and also protect all extracts, concentrates, and byproducts to the same level of protection as the underlying crop that they were derived from.
Okay, can I take that one step further?
Sure.
Okay, because I agree. And I would put it at 1.5%, but only on smokable flour. Okay, on anything that needs processing. There is absolutely no reason in the world, no logical reason that we are trying to regulate THC concentration down to the 0.01% in the field by tearing up your crops. So how about, because really that 0.3% only makes a difference to products going out there to the public, doesn't it? All right, so now you've got licensed processors and you've got licensed manufacturers that are working with it that can regulate it down to that 0.3% and not put farmers at risk at all, right? Not only, okay, so why are we not doing that at the same time? We have the perfect storm right now. Let's use that perfect storm.
Question: Isn't one of the principles that the USDA has overstepped its bounds by changing the definition in the first place?
Well, they have absolutely no ability to do that.
How can they do that? I mean,
they can't. Legally, they cannot do that.
Following after them, whether it's saying that labs have to be, DEA approved, all of the myriad of issues that have come up thanks to the USDA. How do they get back in their place before they're taken to court?
You get a temporary restraining order against them. It stops them, and it stops that whole process in its tracks. Then they cannot be implemented, and we cannot lose in federal court because they've violated a couple of laws doing this, and they've certainly violated. I mean, if you just to take the word post-decarboxylation, which we all know is not a testing method, and to throw that in without the words THCA, total THCA, 0.877, addition of THC to Delta 9, without any of that, they're making up a whole fairy tale based on one word that was misdefined as not a chemical alteration or a chemical reaction, but rather a testing method. Okay, they're not going to win that in court. And then you can talk about, maybe McConnell will say that, oh no, that was my intention. Only if he doesn't want to win, and he might as well just give up his campaign now. He's behind for the first time ever running for re-election. And if he says that, he better move out of Kentucky. The the farmers in Kentucky will hang from the nearest tree. So, does that answer your question, Lisa?
Well, it does, and it doesn't. I guess
Okay. Well, let me clarify then. Go ahead.
What and what Matt's, everyone's going to meetings and sending in comments and trying to get a handle on what the USDA's thrown at us, and hopefully I'd like to be able to incorporate some strategy, that would have an impact.
The strategy is to stop them. The strategy is to stop them, okay? Because it's not just those two things, bringing in the DEA and changing the definition, essentially changing the definition of hemp, which they are not allowed to do. Aside from that, there's all kinds of things in there that were thrown in there. They didn't throw one monkey wrench into the gears. They threw a crate of wrenches into the gears. How about the 15-day rule? And then you have to go to by the way, I don't know if you noticed it, Matt. I just noticed it today because somebody posted a list of all the federal labs. There isn't a DEA-approved lab in Oregon.
No, actually, we just got back from Salem, 2-hour drive away, I had a meeting this morning from it's a legislative work group working on the language to change the laws in Oregon to bring it in compliance with the USDA rules. And that was one of the topics of discussion this morning, was the fact that so far none of the labs that have applied for DEA licensure have been successful, at least in the Northwest, and that there are no approved labs in Oregon.
Hey, let me explain something to you. Okay, go ahead.
I just said the Oregon Department of Ag is actually compiling all of that information to go back to the USDA and say, okay, guys, how do you propose we deal with this?
Or we can just stop them in court. Because let me tell you what the problem is. I have a friend who was just across the border in Washington who's got a lab, and she called, and she's been working with the USDA to find out, and the DEA to find out what she does to get certified as one of those labs. And what she was told is you cannot be you cannot use your existing lab for that. You have to have a specific dedicated lab for that, and it's only that lab can only test for law enforcement.
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
well,
so in other words, you can't use the same equipment. You can't use the same equipment, the same facility. You can't use the same employees. You can't use any of it. You have to start from scratch, and no one's going to do that. No, they'd be out of their mind to do that.
Yeah, so well, that's one of the areas that everybody I've talked to thinks is hopefully is a low-hanging fruit as far as changing those rules.
Well, you know what? The easiest thing is to just stop them. Go into federal court in Indiana. We'll hire Justin Swanson, who was the one who won in federal court on the smokable hemp. In federal court, and we've already had this discussion with him. He agrees with me. There is no way in the world. He says he doesn't even know what they can argue. He really doesn't know what they can argue. A judge is not, look, let's say we don't have the letter from Congress for a moment, okay? A judge, when they start talking about how this whole thing develops from one word, post-decarboxylation, the judge is going to go, and they start talking about THCA and 0.877 and all that. If I'm a federal court judge, I'm going to go, excuse me, let me stop you right there. Can you show me that in the law? And then that's all over. Okay, because we're not going to allow them. No federal court judge is going to allow them to make up this whole story around one word.
Well, the problem is that they stuck the post-decarboxylation into the 2018 Farm Bill. They actually put it in statute, and that's what the USDA, when we met with them in April. Under
a testing regime.
Right.
Okay, it's not a testing method.
Testing protocol.
Okay, here's what that section said. What that section did, okay, it only did one thing. It told states what to do if they want to comply with the federal law, okay? And if they wanted to have a hemp program, they had, if you take out the words post-decarboxylation, just take out that word, all that section says is that they must establish a reliable testing method for testing for Delta-9 THC. And if you take out that one word, now it's very, very clear what they were supposed to do, wasn't it?
Oh, sure. And
it doesn't say adding THCA. It doesn't say multiplying by point. Look, you can't argue that multiplying 0.877 times the THCA is what that law qualified, because you cannot decarboxylate something by multiplying it by any number. Right? You can't.
And like I say, that's all. That was the discussion. Like you say, Courtney explained where that came from. She said that she fought that word, and that. Why didn't she tell?
I got a question. Why didn't she tell us that? Why didn't she tell us that was going on? Because I have a problem with that.
She did. She did. I've been aware of it since the get-go, and in fact, at the Hemp U down in Medford, I was telling everybody what was happening with that, and everybody brushed it off that, oh, that'll never happen.
God. Now you know why I came back from Thailand.
Everybody kind of laughed at me when I said, "Hey guys, you guys need to be lobbying because here's where this language is going."
Because other people were lobbying, weren't they? It was the Hemp Round Table. It was Bob Hobart. We know who the people were that were lobbying for this.
Yeah, a lot of the guys that were. I've actually seen, quite frankly, the Hemp Round Table in action, and I wasn't impressed. They were there in D.C. the same time we were in April, and I was making the rounds with Courtney to our congressional delegation, and went and actually visited with Patty Bennett with the USDA, and that was our message to them: was that this testing protocol is what's going to the make or break for us.
So why can't Congress tell the USDA to cease and desist?
They can. What they need to do is they actually need to pass new legislation to get rid of that stupid post-decarb language.
And what we do by getting a temporary restraining order against them in Indiana or wherever, we can file it in Nevada. What we do by stopping them in their tracks is they don't get to do anything. Because I spoke to 3 women from the USDA right after the tribal meeting that we were all at, and I caught them off guard coming out of the room. I said, "What are you going to do now that Wyden's letter says you can't enforce the total THC?" And she was real clear. She just jumped on that immediately. So she had this beaten into her head. Oh, well, no one can change that without Congress. So what we're going to, and Congress was the one who passed that with that post-decarboxylation stuff in there, thanks to McConnell, and I don't trust them to do it right again, allowing the USDA to do it again. So if we stop it in federal court, then they can't just slick it on through.
Yeah, and I'd love to see that happen.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, good. I talked to Barrett Dash today, and he agrees with me too. So I think if you guys get the whole Oregon delegation on board here, I'm going down to Kentucky to talk to Martin and the Kentucky Hemp Farmers Association down there, and to talk to legislators down there next week. I think we've got plenty of people to put up just a few bucks each, and we can go into federal court in Indiana, and we can win this.
If you can put pressure on McConnell, I think everything becomes.
Well, it's up to Martin, and I'm going down there. I'm going down there to discuss this with him. We can put a lot of pressure on McConnell. They're his home state, and he's running for re-election in 2020. They made a real mistake. Doing this in a presidential election year.
Yeah.
Because Trump is going to be on the side of the farmers, isn't he? He doesn't have a choice.
Well, here's an interesting note. The American Farm Bureau Convention in Austin this next week. Guess who the keynote speaker is?
Mitch McConnell?
Number 3, no, Trump. For the 3rd year in a row.
I wish I could be there. I would love that.
Before he came 3 years ago, the last time a sitting president addressed American Farm Bureau was Reagan.
Wow. Yeah, I can't see Obama doing that.
And this is year 3 in a row. No president in the history of this country has ever come to the Farm Bureau 3 times.
That's why I don't think he's going to allow this to happen. But we need to help him out. We need to give him that TRO. The other thing we absolutely need to do to save this industry, and believe me, I wouldn't have left Chiang Mai, Thailand, and come over here and done this and sat here and froze my ass off if somebody else had just jumped up and done it. But by God, I couldn't stand to watch them win, the big pharma win in this country. We have to sue the FDA. Okay? And we take them into court and get a temporary restraining order against them over their contention that all CBD is now a drug ingredient, because they said that a year ago. That is their official policy. And if they go to enforce that policy, they can kill this industry in a day. One day.
Yep. Yep.
They can send out
You had
5,000 letters and shut it down, can't they? And not only that, once they do that, trying to come back from that with a court action is a little late, isn't it? Because now you've robbed everybody of their income and you've broken them in the meantime. So we need to do that, and we can win on that one because we can prove that it is all CBD is not a drug ingredient. That's an easy one. That's even just as easy or easier than the USDA situation.
And why is that, Steve?
Oh, 2004 HIA versus DEA. Federal court ruled, and essentially it was the Supreme Court ruling because it was never appealed to the Supreme Court. So it's the law of the land. CBD and THC from hemp is different legally than THC and CBD from marijuana, because one comes from an illegal plant and one comes from a legal plant, and there has been no drug approved by the FDA that was produced with a hemp extract. None. All right, and they are clearly legally two different things, even though they are molecularly the same. And that's the law of the land right now, and has been since 2004.
The Epidiolex was made from marijuana CBD, you're saying?
Epidiolex is made from CBD extracted from marijuana.
Okay.
And they did that on purpose. Okay? So I don't care if it's an isolate or if it's a full plant extract. By the way, how would they go up against full plant extract when they don't even allow full plant extract in FDA approved products? So how can you call it the same substance? In other words, they say that it can't be used in those products, and at the same time they're going, well, you can't use it because it's already being used in this product. Not only that, how many other CBD products can we prove that were produced prior to Epidiolex? We can go back to 1940, a 1940 patent on creating CBD isolate. Okay, 1940s. They can't say that they just invented that CBD, that GW Pharmaceutical just invented the CBD. So they can't have a prior claim. They can't make that argument. They will lose in federal court. And if we don't sue both the FDA and the USDA, we're going to lose, because one or the other of them is going to take us out, because they're all being paid by Big Pharma, as is the DEA. You can only imagine what the DEA would do to us. To every hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the hemp
industry. I know
industry.
when we started, would you each introduce yourselves and give the listeners a brief understanding of who you are and your place in the world of hemp and cannabis?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, my name is Matt Cyrus, and it's our 4th year farming hemp here in Oregon. I'm the president of the Deschutes County Farm Bureau, the president of the Central Oregon Hemp Association, and I'm one of the board members of the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association, and I've been pretty active in helping write Oregon's hemp laws and trying to keep it such that it's farmer friendly as much as possible.
I'm Steve Sarich, and I'm the president of the Global Hemp Organization and the president of the Cannabinogen Research in Thailand. We're making medicine out of full plant extracts. And I've written hemp law in 3 states. I was the first one to make a state completely legal, and it was Washington by removing it from the State Controlled Substances Act. But I've written hemp law in Kentucky for 2 years, and also in Hawaii. And I'm a legal expert in court on THC and driving. So, Matt, if you guys ever have a problem up there, I've never lost a case.
Hey, that sounds good.
And I'm certified by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration as a drug recognition expert.
And I'm Lisa Wolf. I'm the chairwoman of the White Buffalo Nation and our Home Now Hemp Garden, and the focalizer of what I hope to be a national coalition, Hemp Aid Now, and looking forward to meeting with Farm Aid people here shortly. And let's get back to talking about the burn victims, of which I am one. And
Yes.
that's
And you had zero THC.
I had 0 delta 9. I think it was 1.12 total THC. Nevada said. My
But
flower
no detectable Delta 9.
no detectable Delta 9. That's correct.
Yeah. How do they win that one?
I just rolled over. Actually, once I met Steve, thanks to Mike Whalen of the Nevada Hemp Association, and another burn victim, Russ, and I realized that the NDA and the USDA were liable. I said, here, sacrifice my girls. But Steve, you said how many? You've said what, 25 farmers in
25 farmers. Okay. Now, let me explain. That was as of the date when we received all of the COA. Well, what masqueraded as COAs from the Nevada Department of Agriculture. It was 25 farmers, 33 crops. All 33 crops were legal under both Nevada law and the federal law. And of those 33 crops, and again, Nevada grew very little compared to the rest, some of the other states like Oregon and Kentucky and Colorado. But 11 of the 33, or 33 and a third percent, had zero THC. I'm not quite sure how they plan on defending that in a lawsuit. They certainly can't cite the USDA law, right? And they certainly what they did was they falsified documents. In all of the COA, quote unquote, COAs that I've received, and that's what we requested, was COAs, all the testing data, and we have not received one document that qualifies as a COA. In Nevada, we received something called an ROA. You know what an ROA is? Don't look it up because there's no definition for it. It's a report of analysis, but it doesn't exist anywhere else. If you search for it on Google, and if you search for it in law, it's not there. A report of analysis is just hiding what was in the plant rather than explaining what was in the plant. And when they only give you a total THC number rather than giving you a THC plus THCA number, it's very, very hard for farmers to even know what their crop tested at. So what they did was they covered up what they did, okay, with a phony document. They compiled a document that was not a COA to fool people, and that's a felony. And they used that felony in order to burn crops. And now what they're doing is, some of these states, they're hiding the evidence of it. That's 3 felonies. And believe me, I'm going to be calling the FBI and having the FBI investigate these people. Or the FBI can explain why they aren't investigating them, and they can explain that to Donald Trump. I guarantee you we're going to get an investigation on this as to why. You know what? I don't care if these people from the State Departments of Ag that burned these crops, I don't care if they go to prison, because we sure would have. We all faced that back when I was growing medical cannabis for 51 years. Believe me, I faced that. Why should these people not face prison for what they've done in burning these people's crops illegally?
I feel bad for the guy in Nevada who, as everyone knows, it's really sad. They picked a man whose last name is Dick to be the one
Jake Dick,
go around and do all the hemp burnings. And, you know, and I told
Only,
them,
only, in
nothing
only in northern Nevada. Only in northern Nevada. We had two different inspectors come, and when they burnt Russ Britton's crop, and that the guy was really a dick. He wasn't Jake Dick, but he was a dick. The other woman, the inspector, cried because we had a videographer there. And he told his story about why he was growing hemp, and she cried. And she said, she said to me, and we have it on videotape, you really need to come and explain to us what we're doing wrong, because we just don't know. Well, I said, you know what? You don't, but certainly the people who did this at the Department of Ag knew, because I sent them emails explaining to them in detail, in writing, back in April, what laws, what felony laws they would be violating if they did this, and they did it anyway. So they can't say they didn't know, and that's why we chose Nevada first.
Matt,
because they can't make that argument.
Matt, you've had some farmers in Oregon reported have taken their own lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Shouldn't these states have to pay for that?
Well, I mean, these guys are ones that, for one reason or another, they had crop failures. It wasn't because their crop was burned.
Okay.
It was, for the most part, you know, a lot of the guys had bad genetics, got conned into buying seed that was either wasn't feminized when it was supposed to be, or it was late maturing genetics that should never have been planted in the first place.
Yeah.
We also guys that, you know, there's a lot of guys out there, you know, masquerading as consultants that, you know, they come from the marijuana industry, and they're going to make their fortune telling people how to raise hemp. And
like
don't
that this year.
You know, you got guys that don't know how to convert to production agriculture and are trying to teach people how to do it. And you've got a lot of other people that this past year, Oregon went from 11,000 acres to 63,000 acres. And so there's a lot of people that were raising hemp that have never farmed before in their lives. You know, they just figured they, you know, throw some seed in the ground and they're going to make millions. And there's a lot of guys lost everything. You know, there were guys who literally bet the farm and lost. And, you know, it was, in one instance, it's my understanding that the consultant told the guy he was screwed, and after he hung himself, they did some retesting and discovered he was okay after all.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we have a lot of people. Go ahead.
It's a bad deal. I mean, there's far too many people that tried it this year, at least in Oregon, that absolutely should not have.
So what state, Steve, as far as you know, enforced the total THC? You mentioned there's Nevada, Hawaii.
Oh, we've got a long list, and it's growing. What we were told by a lot of people in various states, because I was checking from my home in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and trying to find out who burnt crops and who didn't. And I had people tell me that there were no crops burned in Kentucky, and there were no crops burnt here, and no crops burnt there. And then I started finding the people whose crops were burned. So what we're doing is filing public records requests on all of them, and we will find out. Because right now, no one knows how many crops were burned. We have a pretty good idea now that in North Carolina, at least 150 crops were burned.
Wow.
So if you take, we got 21 states, it's going to be hundreds of farms that have their crops burned, and it could very well exceed 1,000 crops. So
are you looking at the same acreage coming up this next year in Oregon, Matt, or are you seeing a pullback, or don't you know yet?
I have no idea yet. I would hope we see a big pullback. Quite frankly, there were way too many people that didn't have any idea what they were doing, and it's also adversely affected the market, because you've got guys that are right now they're trying to sell it for enough to recover part of their production costs.
Yeah,
that was one of the things I said I wanted. I hope that Hemp Aid Now becomes a coalition, and somebody asked me recently how much I wanted for my hemp flower, and I said, well, I would like half of what it retails for, and I'll cover the brokerage fees. I mean, it's crazy what we as growers are facing. And I know you have a lot more experience in farming than I do, Matt, and I sound, it's perhaps far-fetched, but we're seeing, the growers getting $100, $200 a pound, and people making 5 to 10 times as much on it, and it's not functional as a grower. And they're writing the contracts, and it needs to change, I would think, going forward.
Well, the market is a function of a willing buyer and a willing seller.
Right.
And you got right now it's a buyer's market because there's an oversupply, in spite of the huge number of crop failures. We've still got. And with
one letter from the FDA, there's no market.
Yeah, and then I appreciate I don't know if I'm sure you're aware of the congressman that's drafted or dropped legislation that would legalize or would declare CBD as a
but only CBD. Only CBD.
Right.
At least as a start. There's the one in Washington, and there's 2 bills. There's a congressional and there's a Washington state I saw related to food, I believe.
Right.
Well, forget anything coming out of Washington state. That's where I'm from. That's got the most corrupt Department of Agriculture in the entire country. It's even worse than Kentucky, if you can believe that.
Oh, I don't.
We're fortunate in Oregon that we actually have a Department of Ag that is very helpful and works hard to do what they can for farmers in Oregon.
Well, yeah, that's all well and good, except you passed a law there that will ruin hemp farming.
Well, it's a function that they do what legislature tells them to. The actual folks that work with the department are very much on our side.
Okay, but next year they'll burn crops if we don't stop the USDA rules. Oregon will burn
Correct.
Crops like everyone else.
You're right, because they've adopted rules that would bring themselves in compliance with USDA as they're currently written.
Why can't
but on the positive side, they are waiting to enact those rules until the 12th hour. Actually, the rules that they're adopting for Oregon will not take effect, or at least the proposal is that we came up with today. Is the new legislation that brings them in compliance won't take effect until October 31st of this year.
Okay.
Which buys us as much time as we possibly can and still be in compliance with federal regulation.
But a TRO would prevent having to worry about that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
A friendly TRO. No offense, guys, but it has to happen. So
well, I don't see otherwise you're still going to have the DEA in there. So if while you may be able to stop Oregon's rules, you're not going to be able to stop the DEA from imposing themselves on the hemp industry in Oregon.
Right.
That's the problem. So maybe there's a solution besides getting a TRO against these people. I just don't see it. If somebody's got one, I'd like to see it. Otherwise, for a few $1,000s, okay, for a couple of $1,000 from just a few people, we can have somebody go into a federal courtroom and we can stop them. And that only makes sense to me. But I've had people go, well, maybe we can negotiate with them. How well has that ever worked in the cannabis industry?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it worked better in Oregon than anywhere else. It sure as hell didn't work in Washington or most of the other states. So what I'm looking for is a cure, because you know what? I don't want to keep having to come back over here. I'm sick. You know what? I'll be 69 years old on Saturday. And I kind of like living in Thailand. Yeah, it's a good start. And I'm in good health, and I'm very active, and I will work until the day I die. I just don't want to have to keep coming over here, because I've been cold for the last month and a half since I've been here.
I was going to say, we're going to have to come visit you. That sounds
You,
like
you know what? I would much rather you come visit me. That
could be arranged.
Yeah. Well, I'm setting up the most advanced plant research, medical research facility in the world in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And we've got financing for it, and we will be creating amazing drugs based on full plant extract, because Thailand is going to be the sea change. Thailand adopted a full plant model, and nobody is going to be able to use isolates until at least, I don't know, the next 4 or 5 years. And who's going to want to use them at that point? Okay. And so we're going to be creating medicine that cures cancer. And you can't do that with an isolate. And you know that, and I know that. And so what happens here in the U.S. when those drugs can't be sold here in the U.S.? And your only choice for your wife's cancer is chemotherapy or radiation. Okay. And you know that 67% of the people that get chemo die of the chemo. But you could get a pill from Thailand, but Big Pharma and the FDA won't allow it. Somebody's going to start asking some questions, and that's the sea change.
So, gentlemen, as we come to the end of our time, Matt, Steve, is there anything you'd like to summarize and say to listeners, both growers and consumers, going forward?
If you're a newbie, think twice about planting CBD or CBG this year. Everybody seems to be planting CBG. I'm not quite sure why. There certainly won't be a shortage of CBG, judging from what I'm hearing from the farming community.
Well, and that's going to be an interesting one. If everybody switches over to CBG, I could see CBG prices being far below current CBD prices right now.
Very quickly.
CBD could actually be worth something again if we can figure out how to raise genetics that can qualify with all the new rules, unless, of course, we can get them shut down.
I'm going down to Australia in about 2 weeks to look at genetics down there that will absolutely change the hemp and cannabis industry. It actually solves these problems.
Okay,
I'd certainly be interested.
I'm going to ask a framing question then. Steve, given the best of all possible outcomes to re-steer what has happened with the huge monkey wrench, bag of monkey wrenches that the USDA, the FDA, and the DEA have thrown in, can you give us a vision for the hemp industry going forward, given some corrective action that may be able to correct this and get us back into some more utopian vision of a hemp future?
Well, real short. We have to punish the states for what they did, because those farmers have to be made whole, and that's just America. Right? That's just you can't go and commit felonies and burn people's crops and ruin their lives and get away with it. So we have to show the states that they don't get to do that anymore. And then we have to stop the USDA, we have to stop the FDA and the DEA, and then in that year that we have then, in the wake of all of the crop burnings and the bad PR that the state departments of ag and the USDA and the FDA and DEA are going to get for that, then we write really good rules where all of the cannabinoids are regulated at the manufacturing level and not at the farm level. They're not regulated in the field. And until we do that, we're always going to have this problem. And if we can't do it in a year where we've got a perfect storm because of the crimes that they committed in burning these crops, we're never going to do it here. And you know what? Then Asian markets, South American markets, African markets are going to take over the cannabinoid market. It's just simple as that. America won't be able to compete anymore.
Yeah.
What's Matt?
Well, as far as just summarizing, we need to be diligent. We need to fight for our industry, and we need to get things refocused to where it is. And as was said, I mean, otherwise we're going to be left behind. All of the rest of the nations, as everybody else is going to take over and dominate the world, while we're trying to figure out we'll still be arguing over what's the right percentages, and we're messing with our genetics now. We headed full steam in one direction, and suddenly here's an about face. So no, we need to get ahead of this, and we need to get it fixed quickly.
Yeah, we can't keep changing genetics to get around whatever they throw at us next. Okay, so if we can regulate it at the processing, at the extraction and manufacturing level, then we don't have that problem anymore. Okay.
I just find it odd that it's not just a vegetable. You know, I make hemp, garlic, olive oil, and I eat it all the time. I eat my hemp with garlic, and, you know, I add it to my food. It's why can't hemp be like a tomato? It's decriminalized.
Because it's not round and red.
Right,
I'm just guessing. Matt, I would love to talk to you. I would love to talk to you further about genetics. So get a hold of me, because we have another problem in America, and that's the Hatfields and the McCoys fighting over cross-pollination between marijuana and hemp. Mm-hmm. And these genetics solve that problem. Ooh, yeah. You could
I'm actually
both on the property.
That'd be fantastic. I'm actually on a pinning committee that was created in Oregon to try to work on resolving some of that issue of cross-pollination, even amongst hemp farmers.
It won't make any difference because the crop you plant, A, it's 100% female, and B, it's sterile. It will not accept pollen from any other plant.
Well, yeah. I'd absolutely love to continue the discussion with you.
Sure. Yeah, I know it's just not just discussion.
As things go forward, can we meet again potentially? And maybe if there's anyone else in the future to invite. I really appreciate your joining us and being part of Hemp Aid Now. And
thanks for being involved. And we really, really, really need Willie involved in this thing and making sure all these farmers get paid. If nothing else, the farmers have to get paid.
I'd appreciate it. And Steve, I have to thank you for taking me out of my suicidal funk myself, because that's why, I can relate to how it feels, because half of my crop got burned and half of my crop got stolen, and it's
yeah.
But to me, I love growing gardens. I love the plant, and it's a mission.
And it's just a plant, and they should really kind of leave us alone.
It is just a plant, a beautiful plant. And once we're not on the air, Matt, let's talk, and we'll see if we'll move forward on getting Willie involved. So I know you're heading.
Yeah,
to
I'm actually going to be in Austin tomorrow.
So let's have a separate call, and we'll see if we can open a door before I'm due to go down there. So okay.
That would be great. And Matt, if you want, if anybody in Oregon wants to discuss the ideas I just threw at you about how we solve this problem, just give me a call and I'll fly up there because I'm in the U.S. Once I fly back to Thailand, I'm not quite as interested.
Yeah, I understand that. We'll have to come see you at that point.
Exactly. All right. Well, hey, Lisa, thank you for having us on, and hopefully we'll be able to come back. Matt and I will be able to come back and tell you that we solved this problem.
Yes, let's plan on meeting again. Thank you. And
okay.
Thanks everyone
Okay.
for joining.
Thank you.
Fade now.
All right.
All right. Take care.